Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening if you're joining us from across the pond. My name is Josh Strehle. Thank you so much for coming to our session today, Peace, Love, and Data. This is our preview of FormAssembly's sponsored Trailblazer sessions for DreamForce 2024. I am so excited to walk you through our sessions today. Some really cool organizations that we're working with, some really cool stories that we're going to be talking about. And we're also going to do a little discussion on how you can prepare for DreamForce if you're attending this year. And if you're just, if you're attending today virtually because you can't make it to San Francisco next week, you'll learn a little bit too. And maybe it'll prep you for a DreamForce down the road. Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. As I mentioned, my name's Josh Strehle. I'll be your MC, your coordinator for today. If at any time you have a question for me, please use the Q&A box on the left side of your screen. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. It's also a way for you to feed questions to us that I'll ask our participants later in the session with our live Q&A. So if you have questions during either of their presentations, go ahead and submit those through the Q&A box, and I'll make sure that they get asked. Before I go much further, this is the question I get with every webinar we do. Will this session be recorded? It absolutely will. Look for that recording to hit your inbox with the email that you registered for the session for sometime tomorrow. It takes us about 24 hours to turn around the recording, but we'll get that into your inbox so you don't have to worry if you need to drop early or if you want to share this session with someone in your organization. Feel free to send them the link and they'll get an on-demand link as well. The last thing I want to call out today is the Resource Center that's a part of this webinar platform. Should be in the top right corner of your screen, but you can feel free to move things around as you will. The resources section has a couple of things. One, if you are attending DreamForce next week and you are new to FormAssembly, haven't heard of us before this session, and you'd like to get a personalized demo on the DreamForce floor, go ahead and click our registration link there. You can book time with any of our team, and they'll be able to give you a little personalized walkthrough. I think we have a meeting room that we can get you off the floor for a little bit and show you what FormAssembly could do. The other thing that we're doing that's really fun this year is we're collecting donations for some of our nonprofit partners. Atlanta Habitat for Humanity is joining us today, and their donate link is in our resources section today. If you want to help the mission that they, are conducting, if you want to help their mission to serve the audiences that you'll hear about in this session, go ahead and click that link. I'm sure they'd appreciate the donation. And as always, if you are attending DreamForce Live, you can make a donation at our booth as well. I'll give you some more information about that later. Before I take too much more time, I do want to say hi to our presenters today, Shelley and Drew. Say hi to the audience.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, we're going to hear more from both of you a little bit later. I'm so excited that you both are joining us. Thank you again. I'm going to take just a little bit more time and talk about what FormAssembly is doing at DreamForce this year, but we're going to hear from both Shelley and Drew in just a moment. This year, on the DreamForce floor, FormAssembly is focused on peace, love, and data. If you know anything about us, you know that we are all about our data collection and data integration with Salesforce. We like to think that with our incredibly easy to use form builder and our industry leading Salesforce integration, that we make it super easy to create harmony between your digital web forms and your processes and your CRM. So that's why our theme is peace, love, and data. We're going to be very groovy on the DreamForce floor. Come on by and you'll see me in some tie-dye, and my coworkers will be in tie-dye as well. We might have some rose-colored glasses. We'll see. I think we're going to be doing some full costumes. How many of you are going to be joining me in San Francisco next week? I'd love to just get a feel for who's going out next week and who's attending virtually today. If you could click on your screen your answer. I'm going to give everyone about 15, 20 seconds. Let me know if I'm going to see you out in San Francisco next week. The option C is a bit of a joke. If you've been paying attention to DreamForce news, you'll know that Elton John was originally the musical guest for the closing concert for the conference this year. Unfortunately, he did suffer an eye infection, and so Pink and Imagine Dragons are taking his place. I haven't seen Elton live yet. I hope to get a chance to, even though he's semi-retired. We'll see how that goes, but that's why I included that. Let's go ahead and see what people said. Okay, we're seeing a couple of you out there. Hey, swing by the booth. I'd love to say hi. Thank you for spending some time with us today. For the rest of you, that's exactly why we put this webinar together. I wanted to make sure that those of you that couldn't join us out in San Francisco had a chance to hear from both Drew and Shelley, Stanford and Atlanta Habitat for Humanity, get a taste of the session that we're going to be giving on the at the campground. You know, they don't record the campground session, so this is really your only chance to see this live, and so I'm really glad to give you that experience. As I mentioned before, if you're new to FormAssembly, we create peace, love, and data harmony between your web forms and Salesforce. We make it super easy to build forms. We make it really easy to automate processes. Shelley and Drew are going to walk you through how they use FormAssembly to help their teams conduct their missions, essentially. Both of them are serving great audiences, and FormAssembly just makes it a little bit easier for you to get the work done and save you some time doing it. And we're going to show you examples of that today. If you have any questions about FormAssembly, of course, reach out through the Q&A box, head over to formassembly.com, or if you're part of the 15% joining us next week, come by the booth, we'll tell you more. All right, that's enough yapping out of me. Let me introduce you officially now to Shelley Ho. Shelley is the Director of Technology at the Office of Accessible Education at Stanford University, and she's going to show you a little bit about how the OAE uses FormAssembly. Shelley, do you mind walking us through the opportunity that Stanford saw with FormAssembly? What were you trying to fix?
Sure. Let me give you my intro. My name is Shelley Ho, and I'm the Director of Technology at the Office of Accessible Education, or the OAE, at Stanford. I came to Stanford as an undergrad and liked it so much that I just never left. So I was introduced to Salesforce in 2015 when I was asked to replace an old FileMaker database for our OAE student information. At that time, we were storing student data in a mix of locations, some in FileMaker, mostly paper files, and our individual email accounts. We were using a fillable PDF registration form, but that information still had to be entered by person into FileMaker. And I'm going to pause for a second. Actually, Josh, if you could roll back one slide. Absolutely. To the OAE. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Office of Accessible Education at Stanford. There's an office like ours at every higher ed campus that receives federal funding. And I saw some names of universities that are on this call with us. So they might be called different things at your university, like disability services, disability access, or disability or resources. We have different names, but our work is the same. We use academic and housing accommodations to reduce or eliminate barriers to equal access of a student's educational experience. For some students, that means reformatting their course materials into e-text or Braille. For others, it means assigning them a room on the first floor of a dorm or one with horns and strobes installed. Our work is driven by the information we get through these forms that we need our students to fill out. So back to our implementation. We ended up collaborating with colleagues in academic advising to build out a shared Salesforce org. We describe it sort of as a 2-bedroom suite where we share our student contacts in the living room, we get data integration coming through the kitchen, and then we each have our own private bedroom that can be secured for our notes and processes. So remember when I said that our processes are driven by forms, and those forms have to be filled out by our students? Our implementation partners recommended FormAssembly to integrate our data into Salesforce. And for us, user experience was at top of mind. We needed easy and mobile-ready forms for students to register with our office. We needed easy forms for them to request their academic and housing accommodations. And we needed to ensure that those easy forms were also accessible forms. FormAssembly checked all those boxes and then some, actually. We immediately used it to redo our student registration forms and then rolled it out for our academic accommodation requests, our student employee applications, and our housing applications. Today, I'm going to talk about the request for a reduced course load process and how we used FormAssembly to do a lot of heavy lifting.
Fantastic.
So I'm not going to be able to walk you through everything because that's a much larger presentation, but basically we digitized a super dense, double-sided paper form for students with disabilities to request a reduced course load accommodation. And then we can go to the next slide, which shows you just a preview of the back end of things, which is that the build is super amazing, lots of conditionals, calculations, and connectors with absolutely zero code, which was really important because we don't have a developer in our office. And then this last little preview slide shows what the academic record or academic request record looks like. And this request form submission that I showed previously creates the Salesforce record. It's reviewed by our disability advisors who determine if it's a reasonable accommodation. And then for international students, there's an extra approval required from an advisor at our Bechtel International Center. Now, I'm going to show you the coolest part of this process, which is the next slide that Josh is going to go to. And it is that the international student advisors at Bechtel are not users in our Salesforce org. But we had to figure out a way to build them into the workflow without buying them all licenses for this one process. So we built them a portal using a series of 3 FormAssembly forms, right? So you can see here that this is the quote unquote portal we built. And what they can do is they can go ahead and it asks for the student's ID, the student ID, which is just their account name. You're going to see mine getting filled in there. We use that to pre-fill their student ID number and their full legal name to confirm it's the right student. And once the advisor does confirm that, the last form populates with a history of the student's RCL requests, if they've requested this before, including the number of days that they were on a reduced course load status. F1 visas, students have a limit on the total time they can be on a reduced course load or medical leave, so that's really important. The details of the current RCL request are in the form, and then which DA from the OAE signed off and when. And then the choice to approve or not approve this. And that's really built based on, or that's really decided based on their visa status and whether or not they can do so. You can see the conditionals pop up when they select yes or no, because it tells them what the next steps are. If they do say no, it's not approved. I've already pre-filled their name. Once they submit, they get a confirmation that it's been approved. And then they actually get a link back to the form if they want to review a different student's RCL request. So once they submit that, they're all good to go. I'm going to go to the next slide, which is we come back into Salesforce and we refresh that previous record. It goes from awaiting Bechtel approval to, can we start the loop?
So sorry. Absolutely.
No problem. So we refresh the slide, or we refresh the record, and then it changes to approved. If you scroll down, you'll see the disability advisor is there as a lookup because they're users in the system, whereas the Bechtel advisor is just a text field because they're not a user in the system. But then you get those dates in, and in the upper corner, I've even done a little calculation to indicate how many days it took to completion. And in that case, it's 0 because we did it all on the same day. So from start to finish, there are 4 different cooks in the kitchen, right? The international student who has to create the Salesforce record, the disability advisor who signs off if it's a reasonable accommodation, the Bechtel advisor who signs off if it's within the visa guidelines, and academic advising, who takes that approved accommodation request and then processes it with the registrar's office. So FormAssembly allows us to bring each of these cooks into the kitchen at the right time, in the right order, and then limits which parts of the record that can be edited so that we can maintain our data integrity. All right, we'll go to the next slide. And this is just to show you visually where on our campus, our 3 different offices sit, right? So this map shows where an international student would have to go for signatures on a paper form, which totals, about 3/4 of a mile. These approvals are really important and necessary, but we were effectively creating additional barriers through the accommodation process with this paper form, right? So digitizing the process allowed us to keep the approvals, but get rid of the barriers. When we review the over 2,000 RCLs that we've completed since going digital, we realized that over half of them were completed on the same day. So we got that nice zero in the corner that they were able to complete them in the same day, and over 80% were completed in 2 days or less. So even better than this data is the fact that we now have visibility on requests that get started by the student. Before, they might get one signature or pick up the form, but then it gets lost in their backpack, it gets shoved into a drawer, or they just don't follow through. Now we can send reminders before the final deadline so that those accommodations don't just fall through the cracks.
That's beautiful. And, Shelley, I love that you include that map to talk about, the schlepping across campus that you're saving these students, especially those with disabilities. I mean, I remember running around campus, it's been more than 10 years now, but you're trying to get to the registrar's office to submit, like a class registration or something. And that was, core memories of the college campus, but also inconvenient. And it's preventing people, from accessing the services that you and the rest of the university provide. We've got a lot of universities and some learning institutions in the audience today. I know that they have very similar processes. I hope that seeing how you have constructed that, that kitchen, which allows multiple cooks in there, all on that Salesforce record. It's pretty impressive. Graceful is the word that I was thinking while you were showing that single record. Thank you for that. I love that demonstration. I love especially the audience you serve too. It shows that, hey, the forms are getting completed faster, which is great. Your staff can actually conduct that analysis, which is something that's great as well. And then the these students have a more convenient experience. It's a beautiful thing. All right, let's leave Stanford's campus for now, and let's head on down to Atlanta. Drew McGuffin, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself that I took from Shelley. Hi.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Drew McGuffin. I'm the Development Systems and Relations Director at Atlanta Habitat for Humanity. I am a Salesforce admin on staff here. I also oversee the portion of our fundraising team that's responsible for all of our development systems. So that's everything from online fundraising to programs like FormAssembly. I've been on staff here for about 13 years. For most of my career here early on, I ran the volunteer program. And during that stage of my career, about 6 years ago, we implemented Salesforce as a fundraising and volunteer team. I kind of helped lead that implementation for us internally. And we chose FormAssembly at the time to be our online forms tool because of its Salesforce integration. So I've been working with FormAssembly and Salesforce here at Atlanta Habitat for about 6 years now.
Nice.
So I want to tell you a little bit more about Atlanta Habitat and the work we do. So we are an affiliate of Habitat for Humanity International. Many of you have probably heard of Habitat. There are hundreds of affiliates around the country, so we're one of many. We're one of the larger affiliates, though. We build about 50 new homes a year. You see some of the stats here on the slideshow that kind of shows our impact over the 40 years that we've been around. We've built almost 1,800 new homes now. The really bread and butter of our program is our new home build program, and we sell those homes at a 0% interest mortgage to qualified families who are part of our program. So our families who purchase those homes from us work really hard. They meet strict financial requirements. They put in their own sweat. They volunteer on their own home builds. And they do purchase those houses with a 0% interest mortgage. So that's what makes it a really affordable, great program. We've also done a number of repair projects over the years. So we've done almost 900 repair projects between our Repair with Kindness and Brush with Kindness programs that you see on the screen there. And we've now had over 300 families actually completely pay off their mortgages since we started about 40 years ago. So that's the impact that we're having as an organization. And I want to tell you a little bit more about how FormAssembly has really helped us achieve some of those numbers. So first of all, before we got FormAssembly, we had no online form builder. We were using Excel spreadsheets, paper forms in some instances. We were using email to collect event registrations. We had data all over the place. It was very manual. It was siloed. It took up a lot of time and resources from our staff. And so FormAssembly has really helped us save time, save money, and have cleaner data. And so I'm going to show you one example of how we've done that through our home buyer program. So every family that purchases a house from us, when they first hear about the program, they have to come to what we call an information session. We used to do these information sessions in person. So we had once a month, we would have about 100 potential home buyers come and hear about our program. It was like an hour-long session. They would hear about the program. They would sit down with either a staff member or a volunteer to talk through their financial information and kind of figure out if they were going to be a good fit for the program. So you can imagine that's a very labor-intensive process. We had to devote the staff time and resources to doing these info sessions every month. And it was very hard for our stakeholders, our program participants, to come to that because we only offered it once a month. So if it didn't meet their schedule that month, tough luck, they had to wait till the next month. So that was very difficult. We transitioned that entire process online using FormAssembly. So it's been just really transformative for us. So I want to show you, if Josh, if you could go to the next slide, kind of what that process looks now. So now potential home buyers come to our website, they watch a short video that kind of explains the program that replaces that in-person information session we used to have. And now instead of sitting down one-on-one with a staff member, they just fill out a short FormAssembly form. So there's a link to the form on the website there. And we use a really cool feature that FormAssembly offers, the quota functionality, where we actually restrict submission of that form to the first 50 people who access it each month. That allows us to kind of maintain a smaller list of prospects that our program staff can follow up with each month. So this is a look at the form. This is just the first page. We're collecting very basic contact information. Page 2 has more detailed financial information that we're collecting. And that gives our staff an insight into these potential applicants and whether or not they might qualify for our program. So once someone submits this form online, it will add them to our Salesforce instance as a contact record, or if they're already in there, it will find and match their record. And it will add them to a campaign. So then our program staff can view who submitted the interest form that month, right? They're in that campaign and have that list to work off of in terms of prospective buyers. Now I mentioned the quota functionality that FormAssembly offers. So the next slide will show us what that looks like in action. So if someone tries to access that form and 50 people have already submitted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I think, Drew, we may have lost you. Let's see. He's still showing up in my platform. We'll give Drew a second. It did seem like he was having some internet difficulties. I have been working with Drew on his session, so I can go ahead and just mention that they have that cap of 50 attendees, or pardon me, 50 applicants for each month. And then once that cap is hit, when someone submits the form, they get immediately this notification that, hey, this month's application cap has been reached, and they get this information on when they can come back to apply, which, if you are currently using web forms in an application capacity, and I see some nonprofits in the audience, so I know that, you probably have similar processes at your own organization. Drew did just message me and say that he lost connection. We'll give him a second to join. But, it can be tough when there are considerations like application caps that organization, like your form respondents don't have visibility into. And one of the features that I'm so glad Drew uses allows them to almost communicate through the form and let their applicants know, hey, the applications are full for this month. We're going to have to ask you to come back. Thank you, Shelley. We'll give Drew a little bit more time to join. Let me go ahead and bring Shelley on stage, as we say. And Shelley, we had a question during your demo. Oh, Drew's back.
I'm so sorry, y'all. Something would happen with our internet. Apologize.
No problem at all.
So I'm not quite sure when I lost connection.
While you were off, I did explain, how the cap works, and that people who submit the form once it's at capacity receive this message. That was roughly where we lost you.
Yes, yeah. So you cover what I was discussing there. So yeah, it's really seamless for us. I love this functionality of FormAssembly.
Great. Let's, Drew, if you don't mind, let's talk about, beyond what we discussed where, hey, you're allowing applicants, you're getting communication back to them faster. What other, impact has this process had on your staff's, lives?
Yeah, so we've calculated that moving this process to an online form across all three of our program areas saves our staff about 36 hours a month of staff time. So that's really significant. I mean that's a quarter of a staff member's time basically. So that's huge time savings for our staff. It also just really makes the process more accessible for our stakeholders, for our program participants to be able to access that form online instead of having to come in person. When a lot of our program participants are working full-time jobs, working multiple jobs, it's tough to get into our office for a presentation when they can just fill out a form online. Other processes we use through FormAssembly has really impacted us in other ways, where we're moving away from email registration from events to online forms. We're doing online donation and pledge forms that will create opportunities in Salesforce that will automate a lot of our pledge reminders. And we're really seeing a increased result in donations from that instead of relying on old paper donation pledge forms. So there's just a ton of ways it's impacted us.
Very cool. And obviously, it's just a preview session today, so we didn't get into the other ways that you're using FormAssembly, but I'm glad that you mentioned those. It's not just interacting with applicants or the audiences you serve, but it's also internal. And we see that so often at FormAssembly, where it's like initially you need a form to talk to students or, your home buyers. And then you start to realize, oh, well, our internal audiences can use this too. And forms start to improve those processes as well. One thing that I thought was really fascinating, Drew, and I was hoping you'd talk a little bit about it today, is kind of the next step with the home buyer program and how you're planning on using forms with that, if you don't mind talking about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier that I want to touch on is the need for our programs and the need for affordable housing everywhere. But I mean, in Atlanta, nationwide, everywhere, it's just continually growing and getting larger. And we see that because we're tracking the number of people that attempt to access that form on our website every month. And we have 2,000 people every month, the first Monday of the month when we make that form available, 2,000 people access that page of our website to try to complete that form. And we're limited to the first 50 just because of the limited space we have to build homes every year. So that speaks to the need that's out there that's ever growing. And so we're trying to grow as an organization as well. And so FormAssembly is really helping us with that growth. And one aspect of that is going to be moving our home buyer application process from a manual process where people are submitting financial documents in person, through the mail, et cetera. We're going to move that online so that the entire application process is online. We're going to be using FormAssembly's file upload tool. They offer a really cool SharePoint connector. So we have all of our file storage on Microsoft SharePoint. FormAssembly has a connector with that where our applicants can submit PDFs through FormAssembly and we store it straight on SharePoint. We're also going to be tracking our program outcomes through FormAssembly using some pre-program surveys and post-program surveys that we're going to build out in FormAssembly. So the pre-fill connectors, some of what Shelley showed earlier, that we're going to utilize those as well with those surveys to help us make sure we're matching those surveys to the correct program participants in our Salesforce system. So a lot to come for us. We're just getting started with kind of how the complex ways we're using FormAssembly.
I love that. Thank you for that glimpse into the future there, Drew. All right. I started to cue Shelley up with a question before you rejoined us. So now we'll go ahead and get to the question section. Before I dive in, I do want to say, hey, if you have any questions for Drew or Shelley that you'd like answered in this live fashion, use that Q&A box now. We've got a couple, and we'll walk through them, but I want to make sure that you don't miss your chance to, ask them if most of you won't be at DreamForce next week. Stacy asks, and this is for Shelley, how hard is the process, the reduced course load process that you demoed, Shelley? How hard is it for the students to understand? Have there been issues with that understanding?
Thanks for the question. If you could help me roll back to slide number 8.
Absolutely.
I know we went through this pretty quickly, but slide 8 has a pretty good screenshot of at least the start of our form. And
would that be this
that
slide?
A few more back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right there. So this is the form. This is actually a screenshot of the form, and you can see it shows the eligibility and requirements on top, instructions for international students, and we give them literally the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then we give them even a status bar at the bottom there that shows them where they are in the process. And right now they are at step 1, which is that RCL form. And then the next step is that they need to is the OAE has to sign off, and then Bechtel, and then advising, right? So it really helps them. And actually, if you advance to the next slide, this is a screenshot of what the form looks like after they've submitted it. So if they submit the form and then they go back to that link, that URL, what they're going to see is this. You just submitted a form. We have one in progress, and it is now at step 2, awaiting OAE approval, right? And this is actually the same exact form. And one of the really cool things that I didn't get to go into in this presentation was on the build side, when I was talking about the connectors and the conditionals, is that I've built into this form the ability to show them this message when there is a form in our system, right? Because it's doing a lookup to our system to find out, is there already a form in progress? If there is a form in progress, what is the status of that form? And based on the status, they will see a different status bar. So it's pretty cool in that way. It's the same exact form. What they see is going to be entirely dependent on where they are in the process.
Very cool. Stacey had a follow-up question. She asks, in the future, do they log into the same account?
Yeah, so if they log into the same account and the form has been processed by Bechtel and approved, then they go into the same form, and now they can request it for the next quarter. So when I did this demo, we were still in spring of last, the form details were for spring. But we take each quarter offline when we've passed the quarter, and so they can then log in for it. But it allows us to make sure that they also are not submitting duplicate forms, right? So if they're submitting a form for spring and there's already a spring form, it'll say, oh, we've already found one. Thanks so much.
Very nice. Stacey, I believe that answered her question because she followed up and said, thank you so much. Thank you, Shelley. Let me get to Drew. This is a question for your demo. I believe Naomi here is asking about the PDF upload process that you mentioned. Does this process include submitting SSC, passports, etc.? And Naomi, you'll have to forgive me. I'm not familiar with SSC. Drew may be.
I'm not familiar with it either. And my understanding is with the file upload, you can upload any kind of document as long as it's a supported form, such as PDF, JPEG, etc. We do have one form where we're currently using the file upload feature, and it will upload to the files object in Salesforce, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I'm not familiar with those specific.
They clarified it's social security cards. So sorry, Naomi.
Oh, okay.
My abbreviations are strong today.
So we have not built out the entire online application process, including uploads for all of the financial documents. But we will be asking applicants to upload sensitive information. So things like passports and social security would apply there. And FormAssembly, Josh might be able to speak to it better than I can, but does offer some pretty good security requirements around that. So we're comfortable with the security functionality of FormAssembly.
Yeah, Naomi, and for anyone else, asking, one of the things that sets FormAssembly apart is a commitment to security and compliance standards. So FedRAMP, the federal risk and I think it's risk assessment management protocol platform. I should know that off the top of my head, but we hold ourselves to the highest levels of accountability with sensitive data. And the SharePoint integration, one of the things that Drew mentioned earlier, is actually one of our integrations that can be used to pass even PHI, protected health information, across in a HIPAA compliant manner. Naomi, if you are interested in more details about that, I would advise you to reach out to our team. Just go to formassembly.com. You can either get a demo, or if you're interested in our security documentation, we have a security portal that talks about the different compliances that we hold ourselves to, and you can actually download the paperwork and the attestations there. That's at security.formassembly.com if you'd like a little more information there. Thank you, Drew. One more question for Shelley we've got today, and then I've got a couple questions about DreamForce that I'd love to ask. This from Luciano. How much support does FormAssembly provide in setting up initial forms for business processes? I'm so sorry, this question is for me. Luciano, depending on your plan, we do have onboarding and implementation services that you can utilize to help yourself kind of kickstart your process. I want to say that FormAssembly's Form Builder and our automation platform workflow are pretty easy to use, so you might be surprised at how far you can get yourself without a need for code. But if you are in need of help around, like building out forms, building out processes, we do have both onboarding teams that can help you build. We also have consultation hours that you can use and purchase. So I know that I've seen many organizations use those to get off the ground quickly. We do offer those services, and you just need to speak to somebody. If you were, considering purchasing FormAssembly, you just need to talk to them as part of your process. This question is for Shelley. I'm so sorry, Shelley. This from Brittany. And I see you're answering. Can you tell me a little more about the Bechtel portal and the 3 forms you use for it?
Sure. I was just going to say that we call it a portal just because we kind of conceive of it as a way for the advisor signature to come into our system, but it's really just a sequence of 3 forms. So when they submit one form, we redirect them to the second form, we do all the back-end pre-filling, and then when they submit that second form to confirm it's the student that they're looking for, because we've given them that full legal name as well as the SUID, then that goes to the 3rd form, and the 3rd form brings in all of the RCL information. So we call it a portal, but it's not really, it's just a sequence or a workflow of forms.
Very cool. A question, this from Steven, regarding your form, are all 3 of your connector steps being used? And for those unfamiliar with FormAssembly, our forms break out our Salesforce connector steps into pre-filling the form as soon as the respondent accesses it, actions taken upon submit, and then actions taken post-submit. Are you using all 3, Shelley?
Yes, I'm using all 3, and I usually use them a lot of times. So for the demo with the kind of portal, I don't use the after submit because I push them from one form to another, right? But I do really take advantage of that pre-fill for not only Salesforce, which is a lot of what we're talking about here, but you can also connect through SAML, and our institution has an IDP or an identity provider. So I can use SAML to authenticate that these are Bechtel advisors, and then they can access this form, right? Which is one part you didn't see in this demo, is that we're able to authenticate them through their regular Stanford authentication process, so they don't have to have yet another password or another thing to remember.
Very cool. We have one more question. This one was for Drew. And it's actually talking about your future plans, Drew, but what is your process for participant digital signature collection via FormAssembly? I don't know if you've explored that enough to discuss it yet.
Yeah, I mean, we're planning on using the e-signature functionality that FormAssembly offers. But yeah, we don't have specifics about how that's going to be kind of integrated in the process yet.
Okay. I can tell you, oh, I'm so sorry. I lost the question. Oh, I can tell you, Michael, that our e-signature tool inside of FormAssembly is FDA compliant with Title 21, which is one of the few kind of like e-signature compliance standards out there. So if you have any questions, I'd actually encourage you to go to help.formassembly.com and go ahead and search e-signature. You'll be able to find some details about how to use it inside of the system and see if it works for you. I have one more question for me. Honored to answer some questions. This from Ming Yuan, forgive me if I butcher your name. If we want to switch to FormAssembly from a different platform, are there any easy migration tools to utilize, or do we need to rebuild all the existing forms? Unfortunately, I'm not aware of any other provider specific tool to import. So there would be a process for rebuilding. As I mentioned earlier, if you are, I know a lot of organizations have somewhere in the hundreds of forms that may be floating around, like their website. If you are in a situation where you would absolutely need help with those builds, or even just kind of like, building out that project of, hey, here's all my forms, I need to rebuild some, I would encourage you to talk to our onboarding and implementation team. They can definitely help you set up that process. You may find with FormAssembly that you can actually consolidate some of those forms. There is ways to use one form with conditional logic and dynamic responsive questions to actually combine a lot of forms. So that's a question or a project that our onboarding and implementation teams can definitely assist with. But unfortunately, no, I don't want to call it magic tool, but no simple import that could follow up very quickly. And then I'm sorry for that. Shelley, I know you're getting back to Stacy's last question, and that's totally fine. I'll let you handle that. Drew, this question for you. You and I are both DreamForce first timers. What are you looking forward to next week?
Well, since it is my first time, I'm just looking forward to kind of taking it all in. I hear it's kind of a wild experience. So I'm going to try to attend as many sessions as I can without getting too overwhelmed. But in terms of learning objectives, I think I'm looking forward to learning more about Nonprofit Cloud, which is the new nonprofit product that Salesforce offers. And we use NPSP, and thinking about, does it make sense to make that switch and what the timeline for that looks like, and learning more about that while I'm there.
Fantastic. Shelley, you've been there before. What are you looking forward to as a returning campground person? I don't know how they call people there.
A returning DreamForce camper. I'm looking forward to getting in my steps. I get so many steps. It goes off the charts during this time. I've definitely figured out a plan, which is that you really kind of stay in one region for a half day at a time, and you try to fill out your events in that time. And then also to just take breaks and sit for a minute, because sometimes it can get overwhelming, and it's okay to just go sit in the corner and drink some water and relax for a bit, because it's lots of overstimulation, very cool overstimulation, but it's still a lot of stimulus.
Right. Well, I'm sure Drew and I will take that to heart. We will try to stay hydrated. And my other question was, since you had been before, some like advice for first timers. I think that's great advice. You were showing us a little bit of your Salesforce swag earlier. Any swag recommendations for Drew or myself or anybody attending next week?
You can see I'm a big fan of the plushies. I've got some representation from all of our characters here, so I'm into that. I think you have to. I started getting very selective about my swag, so going for quality over quantity, which there is a lot of. I will give Salesforce some props for trying to go toward a more sustainable model and not having too much stuff around. But I'm a big fan of socks because, I like fun socks, and it's it's an easy thing to pack, especially if you're if you're traveling by plane. So, you know.
Yeah, and if we take as many steps as you think we will, we might need a new pair of socks.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you for that. And I do want to, before we kind of like walk out the door today, I do want to thank both of you for the time that you're taking, not only today for our virtual session here, but for our sessions next week. I'm so looking forward to meeting you both in person in those sessions. I do want to thank our audience. Before I let them go, just very quickly, do swing by the FormAssembly booth, booth 504. As I mentioned, we are collecting donations for some of our nonprofit partners. Atlanta Habitat for Humanity is one of them. If you're not going to be at DreamForce, do consider a donation there from the resources section that we have there. Shelley actually mentioned that, FormAssembly, along with the security and compliance bona fides I mentioned earlier, we do have a focus on accessibility for our form builder. And I do have our VPAT statement accessible from our resources section as well. If your organization, has audiences who need accessibility in their web experiences, consider FormAssembly's tools as a way to meet those accessibility requirements. Beyond, those, I want to say, less selfish things. If you would like some swag, do come by the booth. We do have t-shirts. We do have smoothies. You'll see me slinging smoothies on Thursday. If you're going to be in DreamForce, come on by. And I think we have some stickers as well. So if you'd like for a really low, I don't want to say low impact, but something that's not going to weigh you down or fill up too much suitcase space, come on by and we've definitely got some swag for you. That's booth 504. I would love to see you there. I'm going to be at the booth all 3 days. As I mentioned earlier, this recording will be shared. Look for it to hit your inboxes tomorrow. Check out the resources section for those links that I mentioned. If you are interested in learning more about FormAssembly, you don't have to go out to San Francisco to do that. Go ahead and head over to formassembly.com. You can schedule a demo. You can just reach out to sales through the contact link. Any of those questions that many of you had about getting up and started on a platform, I understand that's arduous. If you're a university, it's tough to do that in the middle of a school year. If you need help, FormAssembly can help, and the experts on my team can get you answers. Again, I want to thank you, the audience, for attending today. Thank you for the time you've given me. Drew and Shelley, thank you so much. I'll give you a chance to say goodbye before we send these people on their way.
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much.
Take care. Happy Friday Eve.
Friday Eve. Bye, y'all.